welcome back to the Daily Fantasy Edge, a special Thanksgiving edition. I know I don't do the intro quite like Adam Levitan, but I'm trying hard for you guys today on a special edition, like I mentioned, for the Thanksgiving podcast. We're going to dive into all three games and talk about the plays specifically for the DraftKings slate. But first, I'm going to toss it to Adam Levitan to talk about the news and notes on the podcast, and also some special news that we have with Al. So, Adam, how's it going? And give us the news and notes.
Oh, hello, and a beautiful Thanksgiving to everyone out there. It's just such a glorious time to be alive here on Thanksgiving. If you want the correct take on Thanksgiving, you can go back through some of these solo pods that I've done the last few weeks. I don't have too many news and notes. The main pod will be out. This is a special 3-game only, game-by-game edition of the podcast. The solo pod is already out, so 3-pod week. The Listener League will be for the main slate only. I will have instructions on how to get in to the Listener League on the main slate pod. But I think what's most exciting for this week is Al made it into the top 50 in the GK King of the Beach qualifier, and he is not going because #SmizLife passes up week-long trips in Key West. He is sending somebody who watches him kill zombies, I assume one of our listeners, one of our followers, literally sending somebody to live the Smiz life for 4 days. So, Al, why don't you tell the people who won this trip and what they get?
Yeah, we did a tournament for the Twitch subscribers that I have, all the people that watch the shows and everything else, obviously listen to this podcast, watch the streams that I do there. Had a special give back to the subscribers there, and Jesse Bowser ended up winning the tournament in NBA on Monday night. So he's going to represent me and be my proxy in the Florida Keys for this trip. 4 nights. You get there on Thursday, you leave on Monday, going to be there, living the Smiz life, I guess, for 4 nights, 5 days, going to the final, having a spa day, doing the excursions, the meals, and just soaking in the sun in Miami or in the Florida Keys. So his screen name, though, is the best part because, Adam, we've said this for a long time. Pete and I have definitely said, if you've never experienced a DFS live final at DK, you have to do it, right? So if you've never experienced one, if you haven't been to one, if you can't make it, who should represent you more than anybody else? If I can't make a live final, I'm going to send Batman. And so Batman, Jesse Bowser, Batman 8964 is going to be representing me as my proxy in the Keys.
Congrats to him. Does he actually have to submit your lineup or what is his role? Or he just literally just drinks and waits?
He just hangs out and has a fantastic vacation and then, chills and sweats his own lineup during the live final.
I see.
He has nothing. He
has no responsibilities
Lieutenant Weinberg.
Whatsoever.
Exactly. He's Lieutenant Weinberg. He has no responsibility here whatsoever. I do my own lineup from home. I do everything normal. He just shows up and soaks in the sun and drinks the drinks and toasts the glasses and meets all the people that he might want to meet and just hangs out on a fantastic 4-night vacation to the Keys. So congratulations to him for taking down the trip package.
That's sweet.
#SmizLife. Of course, it's freaking Batman who is going for Al. If you haven't seen any of the blooper clips, Al loves to do a nice Batman impersonation. And also, Levitan, obviously you're alluding to the fact that you hate Thanksgiving. I have something I'll go into a little bit later in the podcast, but Thanksgiving, I feel like such a degenerate and an awful human being. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts there? I mean, before we dive into it, let's talk a little Thanksgiving. What's your day like?
Yeah, normal day. I mean, normal day for me with work and everything. I don't know. I've been blessed to have this amazing job. I'm not going to be like, oh, it's Thanksgiving, I'm taking the day off. There's 3 football games. I'm working a normal day, so it is what it is. So that's tilting in the first place. I hate all the food, and I'm just so stressed, have a ton of action, obviously, and also a ton of responsibility as well with information and projections and all that. So yeah, it's just a super stressful day, and basically 2 main slates in a week, which I'm not complaining, but it is kind of a pain. So to be honest with you, it's probably my least favorite holiday of the year, and quite frankly, one of my least favorite weeks of the year. I do love the actual Thanksgiving slate, though.
To be clear, you hate all the food? Like cornbread stuffing? You don't like cornbread dressing? You don't like that?
Cornbread, I like. Once you put stuffing in there, anything that's been in the anus of the carcass, I'm gonna go ahead and pass on.
Okay, but no, that's the description of the food. What if it's just dressing and it hasn't spent time inside the bird?
Yeah, if it hasn't been inside the bird, I can probably deal with it.
Stuffing is probably my favorite thing about Thanksgiving. Like the cornbread stuffing is the nuts. It's the absolute
So why not?
nuts.
So why, if it's so good, why not make it once a week?
Who said I don't?
Yeah, nobody does. That's the thing.
All right, boys. We got time to talk about the food here later on in the podcast. But Levitan, I feel your pain. Never felt like more of a degenerate than I have over the last couple of years on Thanksgiving. Christmas is a close second, but Thanksgiving I have to spend time with my family and my wife's family. So to all you fellow degens out there who feel, a little weird on Thanksgiving sweating your NFL lineups, don't worry. We're here to help. And the nice thing is the slate is awesome. All right, let's dive into the slate for Thanksgiving. 3 games, tons of huge GPPs on DraftKings, and a lot of opportunity in both cash games to find the value and in tournaments to be contrarian. We'll start with the Vikings at Lions. Adam, what are the news and notes here?
Yeah, not a lot from an injury perspective on either team. Vikings did announce that Case Keenum will start this game once again. Note that these two teams are division rivals, played earlier this year in Minnesota. It was a 14-7 slugfest, I would call it, in week 4. I would note that Darius Slay did not shadow at all in that game. However, he's shadowed so much lately that I kind of think he's going to be on Steph Diggs on the perimeter. Again, we know that Adam Thielen runs the majority of his routes from the slot, and that is not where Steph Diggs goes. So that's just a note there. I do think Steph Diggs will see somewhat of other corners and is so talented that he's certainly still in play. But Adam Thielen looks like the best play on the Minnesota side. While we're speaking of shadows, expect Marvin Jones to be shadowed by Xavier Rhodes. And Xavier Rhodes has absolutely owned Marvin Jones in their last 3-4 meetings. So that would be a concern for me there. And last note, Al, Matthew Stafford, I'm not sure. Like, it's tough. Minnesota has an excellent defense, but this game is at home, and Matthew Stafford comes in white hot. 12 touchdowns in his last 6 games, at least 299 yards. In 4 of them, Matthew Stafford, I believe, is like 1,100 cheaper than Kirk Cousins. The matchup is difficult, but he intrigues me still somewhat.
I don't know that I'm that intrigued in a lot of the pieces in this game. There's a few that I want to have exposure to. You already mentioned one with Adam Thielen. I think that Case Keenum's in play. Of the 2 running backs on Minnesota, I think McKinnon's the better choice of the 2 because of his inclusion in the passing game. Yes, Murray's been doing a great job, and McKinnon is completely out of the package once they get inside the 10-yard line. It's all Lat Murray once they get in there. On the Detroit side, because of what happens with Marvin Jones Jr., I think Golden Tate is the play on Detroit. But those are the only 4 players that I really think I want exposure to in this game.
That's it, Al. No
Right?
one else?
Nobody else.
No one else?
No.
No Golden Tate?
I
Nothing?
said Tate. I said
Okay.
Thielen, McKinnon, Tate, and
I missed Tate,
the
sorry.
quarterback. Yeah.
Keenum.
And Case Keenum. Those are the only 4 guys that I think I really want to have a lot of shares of in this game. Like, I don't know that I want a lot of Stafford. Adam detailed exactly why I don't want Marvin Jones. I've divorced Ebron. Maybe you can make a case for Rudolph. Defenses, I'm not really counting in exposure
Steph
because
Diggs.
I just kind of play. Steph Diggs, I'm going to avoid. I mean, you're going to have some of him because how many different ways can you go on a 3-game slate? So I'm going to have some of him, but like, he's not somebody that I want to overweight versus the field in this matchup. I'd rather be overweight on Thielen versus the field.
Well, he's the American hero. He's won
He
Smiz
is.
$1 million, and Smiz is fading him. So that's all you need to know. I do think Theo Riddick as a tournament play makes a little bit of sense if you're going to go with Case Keenum stacks. If you're going to stack up Keenum and Rudolph and maybe Thielen, I think it makes sense to run it back with him. He's a pass-catching back, obviously, who should be contrarian on the slate. And I think that's a big thing. If you're playing tournaments, understanding where you can gain leverage versus the field is really important. The Minnesota running backs are tough. Obviously, it's the second time within the division, which generally is better for the defenses, like Adam pointed out. So I do struggle with this spot. Xavier Rhodes, Adam, did miss practice, I believe, on Monday with a calf injury. He did come back into the same game last week with that same injury. You're pretty convinced that he's going to play, though.
Yeah, came back to practice today, Tuesday, and said he's going to be fine. So no worries on him.
Okay. All right. So we're good on that. I think you can take Marvin Jones out of the equation, especially for cash, which makes sense. I love Tate. I think Thielen, you're paying up for him, but he certainly has as much upside as any receiver on the slate. We'll talk about the later games here soon. I do think you can get both these quarterbacks relatively low ownership. I think that Cousins will probably come in the most owned, and then potentially in that Chargers-Cowboys game, we could have some chalky guys as well. In terms of tournaments, Adam, who do you think is a better play, Keenum or Stafford?
I think I like Steph Diggs a little bit more than Al, and I can't believe I'm saying that after Steph Diggs cost me all the money last week. But yeah, I think that by playing, like, everybody wants Thielen, everybody wants Diggs, people like Kyle Rudolph, but like people don't want to play Keenum. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So I guess I'll go, I don't know. I like Stafford too. That's the thing about these slates. Like, they wouldn't be, Keenum and Stafford both wouldn't be plays for me at their prices on a main slate, but like on a 3-game slate, it's like, Matthew Stafford has as high a ceiling as anybody despite the matchups. So I think Stafford's ceiling is way higher. Let me say that.
All right.
Then Keenum, yes.
Yeah. And he's only 700 more. It's not a big difference.
Right.
I know there's good tight ends on this slate as well, but Rudolph, to me, who's seen 7 targets or more in the last 6 weeks, is a guy at his price tag that makes a lot of sense to me. He's one of the guys I am considering for cash. All right, let's move to the Chargers at Cowboys here at Levitan. What are the news and notes, and how are you attacking this game?
Yeah, a lot of notes here. Sean Lee will be out. And, we talk about defensive injuries a lot. I'm not sure you're going to find a bigger difference maker than Sean Lee in terms of splits against the run game. Tyron Smith is questionable. Looks like he will head to a game time decision. The Cowboys' very influential left tackle, arguably their second best player, second most valuable player behind Dak Prescott. So I'll be watching those injuries for sure. We should talk about Melvin in relation to that Sean Lee injury. I expect Casey Hayward to be shadowing Dez Bryant. Last week, the Cowboys only had 2 running backs active, Alf Morris and Rod Smith. Darren McFadden was a healthy scratch. Kind of expect that to be the case again. Rod Smith is the pass catcher. Alf Morris is obviously the major feature back. We saw Mike Williams get in the mix. We've seen the Gazelle play a ton but not produce. We've seen Hunter Henry continue to share snaps. I mean, there's a lot of plays in this game, Al. I would be having a hard time kind of pinning down my favorite play, I would say, but considering the game that Keenan Allen just came off of, and considering how few other running backs people are going to feel okay with, I expect Keenan and Melvin Gordon to probably be the 2 most owned guys in this game.
I wouldn't disagree. Alf Morris, as you said, if they scratch all the other running backs and it's basically just him and Rod Smith. Rod Smith's supposed to be the pass catching back, got 0 targets last week. So
in a game they got trucked.
In a game that they got housed. So how are you not? I don't get it. Anyway, Dez Bryant, fine. I think that there is some merit to going with the all or nothing guys, especially in tournaments this week. Guys like Terrence Williams, guys like Terrell, the Gazelle, might be in play this week at a lower price point against Dallas, who has kind of gotten beaten through the air this year. And Hunter Henry may be my favorite play in this game. As you said, with Sean Lee out, the tight end numbers go through the roof against the Cowboys when Sean Lee is out.
All right, Al. Question for you. Tyrell the Gazelle scores a touchdown in this game. What are the odds that within 5 minutes you have the Gazelle GIF on your Twitter machine?
Oh, just hammer the under. It's going to fly under 5 minutes.
How about 1 minute?
1 minute. I think that's a good line. I think 1 minute is kind of tight where maybe he doesn't see it. Maybe he's maybe I'm stuffing my face with cornbread dressing and I don't see it there. That's a possibility. I think 1 minute's fair. 5 minutes, just hammer the under.
So we're talking about prime time eating time for you, Al. It's 4:30 Eastern, 1:30 Pacific time. I mean, this is right when I assumed your meal's going down. So yeah. I am intrigued to see when that comes in. Obviously, we're hoping for that if you roster Tyrell the Gazelle. I think Melvin Gordon will end up being the highest owned player on the slate. I think running back is the weakest position across the board, where certainly you want to pay up for Melvin Gordon's security. Obviously, last game with the Chargers was a huge blowout, but you look at the first half, he was the guy getting all the opportunity. And I think people will want the security of Melvin Gordon. And given that we don't have many expensive players on the slate, I expect him to be well over 50% owned and certainly chalk in cash games. Keenan Allen's intriguing to me. Obviously, you're paying up relative to last week's 7,300 on the Thanksgiving slate versus 5,900 that he was on the main slate last week. I still think he'll be pretty chalky, like Levitan mentioned, but there are a lot of receiver options. Now, we talk about the Cowboys. Dak Prescott, to me, is the one guy I'm trying to figure out. Obviously, versus the Chargers, it's a little challenging. They have a great pass rush, great corners, but if they get the left tackle back, Levitan, where does Dak kind of fit into the scheme if you're playing a lot of tournaments? Do you want to be overweight or underweight on him versus the field?
I'm always on Team Dak. We know he's not having sex, number one, but also we know that he is like really good. I think people like want to bang on Dak for whatever is going on right now. Like he's just good, and I always like it's kind of same thing that we talked about with Keenan Allen last week. Like you can say whatever you want, like he's just a good player. So yeah, if people are going to be off Dak, I'm interested in that if I was playing a lot of lineups. The problem is this Chargers team is one of the most difficult in the league to pass on because they have one of the best pass rushes, as you mentioned, and one of the best corner duos, as you mentioned. So on paper, it is not a good matchup for Dak whatsoever. A couple quick notes. You mentioned Melvin Gordon. I think people are scared of Austin Eckler. I would note that Melvin Gordon got 100% of the running back carries in the first half last week before the blowout got going. So I think Melvin remains the feature back there. He is extremely expensive. He will be extremely chalky. And yeah, Tyrell the Gazelle. I mean, dude is playing a ton. Like he just plays like 90% of the snaps, 95% of the snaps, 89% of the snaps, but he doesn't do anything in the box score, perhaps because they have so many mouths to feed, and he's kind of honestly playing like a Terrence Williams role where he's just kind of a clear out guy and not really a featured player, but that doesn't mean he can't hit one. And, like somebody's going to break this slate, with a big play or whatever. And it could be Tyrell. It could be Terrence Williams. You just never know.
One other guy it could be that could break the slate is dad runner Jason Witten, who does have the matchup versus the Chargers. I'm not the one who's going to tout him. I'm not the one who's going to give the analysis. We're, of course, going to toss it to Al, who is team dad runner. What do we think about Jason Witten now?
I mean, we got double dad runner here. Dad running back at dad. Mm-hmm. So what if you went Dak to Witten and run it back with Antonio Gates, Pete?
Oh, my gosh. Gates? Witten is already kind of...
I'm just saying, you could double dad it up on Thanksgiving Day. I mean, who would carve the turkey if both of those guys are on your team?
Witten versus Gates, and who's carving the turkey? I mean, that's right? A tough call.
If both of those guys are on your team, which one carves the turkey?
2 Hall of Famers. 2 legendary tight ends.
Yeah, 2 dads.
2 guys running 5.5 40s right now.
But they box out very well. They'll break Santini into submission.
Al, rank these 3 in terms of 40-yard dash times. Gates, Witten, Levitan.
I know what I run, by the way. I actually know what I run.
What is your 40?
So when I was at the Super Bowl for the Patriots Seahawks Super Bowl at like the NFL Experience, you can run the 40. Okay. So I was in jeans. I was not in like optimal running shoes, and I ran like a 5.1.
Not to make any excuses, but here's a list of excuses.
It was freezing in there. I had a cold.
I didn't stretch beforehand.
Not to talk about why
I just ate a big turkey meal.
Yeah, exactly.
Al, rank them.
No, but they can't run a 5.1. They 100% cannot.
You don't think they can run a 5.1 at this point in their careers?
Absolutely.
So you would take yourself.
I think Gates would beat you in a race. I think Gates would beat you and you'd beat Witten.
Okay.
But like Witten's also 6'7", 275 pounds, keeping up with your, what are you, 5'8"?
Maybe, but I'm like
maybe
for this mile race prop I've shed a lot of weight. I'm down to like 143 or something like that. So
Jesus, 143?
Yeah.
I weighed 143 in like 8th grade.
You got to be light to run the mile. That's something that I've done research on.
Well played.
Yeah.
Wow, we got into a lot of metrics about Levitan that I didn't realize we'd get into when we went down this rabbit hole. Definitely an interesting game. You know, the one thing about these first two games versus the Redskins game, both indoors, perfect conditions. Obviously, the Redskins have the highest team total on the slate, but just something to be cognizant of. Both offenses are certainly in good position. And unlike the Vikings-Lions game, which is the second game within the division where historically fantasy production's been down, this Chargers-Cowboys game is a unique matchup, and I certainly think there could be a lot of fantasy goodness here. Let's move to the Giants at Redskins. Kirk Cousins has been your boy for a long time, Levitan. He sets up to be the chalk quarterback. What are your thoughts on him and the news and notes on this game?
Yeah, most expensive quarterback, too. I think the news and notes in this game revolve around the Redskins running back situation. We know that Chris Thompson is unfortunately done. Rob Kelly has been done. They've had a bunch of other injuries to their backup running backs. They're down to Samaje Perine, Byron Marshall, who they signed off of the Eagles practice squad like 10 days ago, and a running back they called up off their own practice squad. I believe his name is LaShawn Daniels. So it's interesting, you know, Samaje Perine has like these massive arms and like massive quads. Like I've never seen arms like this dude. They're like, I don't even know how to describe it. This dude is jacked, but he is not play very well in the pass game. And Byron Marshall was a receiver at the University of Oregon, like an actual wideout. He has been a member of #Team Preseason, played well for me when he was on the Eagles in the past. How much can he play, though, when he only joined the Redskins 10 days ago? Like, I think that's one of the bigger questions on the slate, because he's only like 3,200 or something like that. And if he takes the Chris Thompson role or some kind of pass back role, he'll be really interesting. But yeah, I think Perine will be the chalk behind Melvin Gordon. Jordan Reed is questionable, Al. We know what happens when Jordan Reed is out. We know what happens in a flow chart. Vernon Davis is obviously going to be the most expensive tight end, assuming Jordan Reed is out. And also at wideout, Terrell Pryor is done with ankle surgery. It will be Josh Doxson again. It will be Jamison Crowder again. It will be Ryan Grant again as the top three receivers for Kirk Cousins.
I agree with you, and I want shares of Kirk Cousins, but I would rather pay down a little bit at quarterback and get my exposure to Kirk Cousins through his pass catchers, through Davis, through Crowder, as well as through Doxson, right? You can even sprinkle in a little Grant in GPPs. I don't think that he's a cash game play out of those four guys. I think he's the one that I would not want in cash games. The running back situation, I'm not excited to play Sammy Perine. I'm just not.
Yeah. So
I understand the situation. I know he's going to get like all the run, and I know he could get 20 touches as a home favorite. A home touchdown favorite. I get all of that, but like I'm just not excited to play him because I don't think he's all that good. Like he could very easily Melvin Gordon this slate up and get like 20 touches for 65 total yards and no touchdowns.
So on DraftKings, when you don't catch passes, you can have a good game and still not put up a big number, right? Like he could go 18 for like 80. And
Melvin Gordon last week, 20 for 80 with a touchdown, still only had 14 points.
Right. And if you don't score a touchdown, you might get 8, even if you play well, if you don't catch passes. So, yeah, there's certainly risk with Perine, but his volume projection is pretty high, I think.
Here's the running back that I actually am a little bit higher on than Perine in this game, and it's Orleans Darkwan. I know that the Giants are underdogs in this game. I know that they're going to be playing from behind. But you're talking about a guy who's getting 20 carries, 14 carries, 16 carries. The last 3 weeks with some involvement in the pass game, 2 catches in each of those games, getting all the goal line work. They just don't have very many routes that they can go do the New York Giants. I think Darkwan makes a lot of sense at 4,600, especially if Shepard is still out this week with a headache. I mean, look, if I had to play for the Giants, I've had a headache too.
Oh, I missed my responsibilities. Sterling Shepard not expected to play in this game, missed practice. I don't know what's going on with him. I don't think it's migraines. Maybe it is, but maybe it's something in the concussion protocol or whatever, but hope he's all right, but not expected to play. So obviously, same thing as last week. Roger Lewis, Tavares King, Travis Rudolph in the slot, and Evan Ingram with a big pass catching role with Shepard out.
All right, boys. Let's go back to some college football days.
Sammy Perine won Pete all the money.
We got all the goats here. And Shepard, another Oklahoma guy, it's a bummer that he's most likely to miss. But you talk about upside. Perine rushed for 427 yards on 34 rushes against Kansas.
And he was what, like 5% on that day?
He was a little more on than that. Melvin Gordon the week earlier broke the record for most rushing yards in a game with like 417. I don't know the exact number, but also a historic game. But P. Ryan came in and smashed that. So there's some upside here. I'm not saying that it's going to come to fruition at all. Obviously, I would take the under on
400 plus yards.
25% of the yardage that he got in that game versus Kansas. But there is a little bit of upside. I know he hasn't been as effective, but I do think he'll end up being pretty chalky at his price tag given the uncertainty at that running back position. And because the Redskins have the highest team total on the board in this slate, certainly a good play if you're going to stack quarterback receivers outside of Cousins and all his pass catchers. I think P. Ryan's a nice complement to that. The one downside, obviously, is he's been ineffective so far in the NFL and certainly doesn't have the pass catching upside that we want to see. But with Chris Thompson out, maybe he's a little bit more involved on a short week. The one thing that I'm interested in here is how to get leverage versus the field with these receivers. Al, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think Grant is absolutely not in consideration in cash games, but in tournaments, if you tell me he's 3-4% owned versus all these other guys, I absolutely want exposure to him, and I want to run it back with guys like Lewis and Ingram here on the Giants. I do think the Darkwood call is another really good one, especially if you're in a fade Kirk Cousins. He certainly makes a lot of sense as well. Adam, any final thoughts here on this game?
One other thing, a lot of offensive linemen out for the Giants and the Redskins. Really, I mean, the Redskins' offensive line is extremely banged up. They're down to like their second string center and like third string guard or something like that. And then for the Giants, DJ Fluker, Justin Pugh, Weston Richburg, all out. So I think you can make a case for both defenses perhaps in this game. The Giants obviously has a kind of wild GPP play, and the Redskins is more of the most likely, most owned defense on this slate.
Yep, I agree with that completely. All right, that's going to do it for this game. We are going to move into our conviction plays for Thanksgiving. All right, Adam, I'm going to toss it to you first. Your conviction play for your favorite food on Thanksgiving. I'll go next, and then we'll toss it to Al to give his conviction food as well as end the podcast.
You didn't set this up at all. The people are waiting for an actual conviction play. You didn't even tell them what we're doing.
Conviction food. I said that.
Okay, you got to explain it.
If you want to set it up better than me, I mean, go right for it.
You got to tell the people we're not giving out a conviction play. Instead of a conviction play on a 3-game slate, we're going to give out foods for Thanksgiving.
You just said that.
All right.
I said conviction food. What else? Do you want me to give like a long monologue about like what foods we like? I mean, you're going to give the worst answer ever here because clearly you don't like any of the foods. We know Al's going with stuffing. I mean, like, what else do you want me to say?
I might have a contrarian pay for you here.
All right.
Okay.
Let's just get this over with. I want to be as full as possible going into the Thanksgiving meal. I don't want to even be tempted to touch the bird carcass, any of the anus stuffing, anything like that. So I have scouted out a couple places that I know will be open. I think I'm going to be able to get a nice, maybe some scrambled eggs, a little bit of bacon, some home fries, and a bagel in the morning before the first inactives come out. And then maybe on my way to the Thanksgiving feast that I'm going to after the second inactives come out, I have scouted out some Chinese food that I am interested in, maybe a little shrimp lo mein, something like that. So I'm very excited about that.
I mean, I'll let you really dig at the Levitan. That's probably the worst take I've ever heard.
You're the worst person of all time. First of all, Chinese food is for Christmas. That's when you eat the Chinese food.
Oh, I'll be eating it then too. Don't worry.
Take it from the Jewish guy on the pod. Okay? Chinese food is traditionally served on Christmas, not Thanksgiving.
I'll be eating it on Christmas. Believe me.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, Levitan, we already feel like awful human beings.
Yeah.
You have to bring in all this awful food on your Thanksgiving as well?
Well, that's the other thing, right? Not only am I like degenning and like making late swaps and sweating every snap, I'm also not eating any of the food. And everybody's like, Adam, why aren't you eating the food? And then I got to go into my whole thing and my whole spiel, you know? It's just
What about the dessert? Do you like any of the desserts?
You don't like pie?
I like ice cream.
They have ice cream.
Nah.
All right. So it's very clear. Levitan is the GOAT of DFS and NFL analysis. He is the WOT, the worst of all time when it comes to Thanksgiving food. You know, I too, on Thanksgiving, really go through some tough times, Al. I get to my parents' house. I'm setting lineups. You know, everyone's wanting to talk about what's going on in the world and hear about each other. Meanwhile, I'm just researching NFL. Then we get into the meals and all these other things, and I just can't pay attention to anyone. I'm ADD, can't look anyone in the face. I'm just staring at the TV, sweating my DFS lineups. And then the worst part, by far, is after that, I have to go to my wife's family's house. And everyone's there, and they want to talk about what's going on. And, you know, obviously not as close with my own family, trying to get closer with these people. And, of course, I'm sweating the last game of the Thanksgiving slate like crazy. I mean, this is the game that's going to swing everything. Mm-hmm. And I'm just disingenuous, try to make small talk, but really, I'm perseverating on the game. And fortunately, the only good news out of this is this year, one of Ashley's uncles, my wife, asked me about DraftKings. So this year, I might have just a glimmer of hope when I get to my wife's family's house on Thursday, I'm sorry. But to go into my conviction play for the food, that was a long-winded explanation about why I feel terrible on Thanksgiving. Not quite as bad as Adam, who's eating Chinese food. I enjoy all the Thanksgiving food, but the best part of the meal for sure is the pie. I don't discriminate against any pies. I like all pies, but the top two for me for sure, pumpkin and cherry. Those are the two best. All the calories on Thanksgiving. Love the pies. Al, what's your conviction food? Maybe your contrarian food as well, and get us out of here.
First of all, fade pie. Pie sucks.
Oh.
Okay? I'm going to get into this tomorrow. I'm going to get into this tomorrow. I'm going to have a video. It's all prepared. We're ready to go with my pie takes for tomorrow on Wednesday. Those will be out. I'm not going to spoil them, but, you know, pie sucks. 2, yes, stuffing is delicious, and it's probably my favorite part about Thanksgiving Day. But the best part about Thanksgiving food is the morning after sandwich. You get the leftover sandwich. You take a dinner roll, you dip it in the gravy, you take some turkey, some cranberry sauce, some stuffing, a little bit of potatoes on the side, the sweet potatoes on the sandwich, you put it all together, and you get yourself a nice leftover sandwich the next day. That is the absolute nuts for Thanksgiving. We hope that you guys hit the absolute nuts this week on DraftKings as well in the 3-game slate. And if we don't take down a GPP, we hope that one of you guys do. So for Adam and for Pete, I'm Al. Hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving. Be safe and say hi to your families. Bye, everybody.
We are promoters at DraftKings and also avid fans. Our usernames are Adam Levitan, Al Smizzle, and CSU Ram 88. We may sometimes play on our personal accounts in the games that we offer advice on. Although we have expressed our personal view on the games and strategies in this podcast, they do not necessarily reflect the views of DraftKings, and we also may deploy different players and strategies than what we recommended in this podcast.